Where exactly were you when they announced your Padma Shri? Were you
I was in Maharashtra.
okay on work?
Yeah, we had a very interesting get-together, which they call Sarpamitra Samalan. And basically it was the Friends of the Snakes, 700 of them, snake rescuers from different parts of Maharashtra, gathering in a town called Mahad. And one of the groups there called it's called OWLS, the Organization for Wildlife Studies, OWLS.
Yeah.
A wonderful group of people, got all these people together, and several of us, including several senior forest department officers, myself, and Mr. Khairi, who heads the Pune Snake Park, all of us got together to just basically to talk to these rescuers. And you know, snake rescue in India, as you know, is kind of a controversial thing because a lot of guys do some pretty crazy stuff. A lot of guys have actually been killed by snake bite because of doing this crazy stuff. So this was an effort to get people together and do the right thing, basically.
So when you wake up in the morning, what is your first thought, which is work-related? Do you think of snakes or do you think of crocodiles? Or?
Yeah, when I first wake up in the morning, I probably don't think of snakes and crocodiles, but sometimes I do. Certainly, yeah. We have several dogs at home.
Yeah.
So probably at 5 a.m. when they start making noises to go outside, that's the first thing I think about. Shut up, dogs.
So if there was an extinct creature that you would have wanted to meet, I mean, is there an extinct creature you would have loved to meet?
Of course, Tyrannosaurus Rex. I mean, come on. Every herpetologist feels that they've been born way too late, many millions of years too late. Wouldn't that be wonderful?
Yeah.
Scary too, of course.
So, you know, you've said in an earlier interview that children would gravitate towards reptiles if it weren't for their parents. And do you feel like, would you have loved the chance to do, I know you do TV shows, you've done a couple of films and stuff like that, but the thing is, would you have loved to do something like on the lines of what David Attenborough does, or to kind of promote? I mean, have you ever thought of that, anything of that?
I haven't really. I've been sort of pretty focused on my mission in life, so to speak. I never really thought about it that much. I just sort of did what came naturally day by day. So maybe if I had thought about it a little bit, maybe I would have headed more in the direction of making general natural history films. But I'm so focused on reptiles that it seemed like just what I'm doing now, for example, is going back to almost my first days, getting people to understand snakes, learn how to live with them, and deal with snake bite. So that's what it's come back to.
And do you remember the first wildlife that you actually fell in love with? Was it the snake that you found outside your house in New York, or was it something else?
Actually, I think I was more in love with little creatures like spiders and insects, different kinds of beetles and stuff like that to start with. But when I found my first snake, that was kind of a whole comeuppance. I sort of launched myself into a whole new area of animal love.
Okay. And is there a favorite now? Do you have?
I don't really have a favorite snake. I'm asked this question quite often, but when I see a vine snake, for example, with its fantastic slender nose, beautiful green form, it's very impressive and very beautiful. When I see a king cobra, I'm totally impressed by the size, the magnificence of it. It's really a king. And when I see a crocodile, I'm just so impressed with its power and strength, and now that I know about it, with its intelligence. So I'm just impressed by reptiles in general. I don't think I have a favorite species.
Okay. So you'd mentioned that what was your perhaps your best and the worst experience? Was it an unusual discovery that you made, and your worst experience in the sense were you hurt and kind of waiting for help and kind of sinking into despair somewhere?
Yeah, perhaps one of my most wonderful experiences was I was with my son Nikhil, who's now a grown-up man, but when he was about 4 years old, we were on the Kodaikanal Ghat Road, and he quickly called to me and said, "Dada, Dada, snake!" So he came over there, and he had found a snake, and it was a snake which, my gosh, I've never seen a snake like this in my life. So we photographed it, counted the scales and everything. It turned out to be a new species of kukri snake, and it's now called after him, Nikhil's kukri snake. So that was a very exciting experience, as you can imagine, to find a new species of snake and to describe it.
Kukri is in the kukri?
Kukri, yeah, kukri snake. The reason they call it that is
Yeah.
because its front teeth are shaped like a little kukri blade, because they happen to eat reptile eggs and they slice them open with those teeth. It was just an amazing find for a 4-year-old. So, I mean, I had my own 4-year-old experience, and here I've got a son who had his experience. The most deadly experience I had probably was getting bitten by a snake called a green rock rattlesnake in Arizona. I was hunting snakes there for something called the Staten Island Zoo in New York, and I was sending them some very rare species of snakes found high up in the mountains. And I heard a buzzing of a rattlesnake, so I started moving some rocks, and suddenly, a little in slow motion almost, you could see a head of the snake coming out, and it grabbed me on the hand and it made a deep injection of venom. So I knew I was in trouble because I was quite far away from any help. And indeed, it took me several hours to walk back out of the forest. And during that time, I had a very severe allergic reaction, so I was sneezing and itching all over from the bite of the snake. So I thought I was really in trouble. Luckily, I came out of it okay, but for those few minutes at the beginning, I was pretty scared.
So, can you tell us something about your work at the rainforest research stations across India, the one especially at Agumbe?
Yeah.
And you have 7 others or 6 others that
Well, we've got one in the Andaman Islands, and I'm in association with other rainforest research stations, but the Croc Bank actually only has those 2, the one in Agumbe and the one in the Andaman Islands.
So what exactly, are you kind of creating a rainforest ecosystem there, or how does
Well,
it
no,
work?
it's luckily already created. We were, a wonderful thing happened that we actually found a piece of land which was surrounded by forest. And when we went there, the old farmer there's, I don't know, he didn't recognize me from anywhere, but he said, you know, if someone would just buy this land, we would be very happy, because my son and daughter, they moved off to the city and they have no interest in doing this. So I had to think, wow, this is an opportunity we can't miss. Then my mother had died the year before, and she had left each of her kids a small sum of money in her will. And it was just enough to buy this 5 acres of land. And that's really how it started, the Agumbe Rainforest Research Station.
So when you say research, what do? You look at the entire ecosystem, you look at
Yes.
or is it only particularly with reptiles?
Well, it's me with reptiles,
Yes,
but we bring in a whole bunch of people. We've tied up an agreement with the National Center for Biological Sciences and the Indian Institute of Science in Bangalore. So students from there come on a regular basis to do courses there, to do particular studies, everything from moths to lichen to funguses to frogs, and birds, of course. So there's really a whole gambit. We're basically providing an opportunity, a safe and reasonably comfortable opportunity to live in a rainforest. It's not easy.
Yeah.
When you go to study in a rainforest, it's nice to have some creature comforts to come home
back
to.
Yeah. Right. So you're also a ham operator, right?
I was.
Do you still
for several years, but I haven't kept it up, and I'm very sorry for that. In fact, in this day and age, I remember last year we had a cyclone, the year before that we had a flood.
Floods, yeah.
Try to get on a phone, impossible. Landlines, cell lines, they were all out. But friends of mine were communicating on radio.
Yeah.
So it's got a fantastic opportunity for disaster management.
So, do you feel a lot more people looking at a career in herpetology now compared to when you started out?
I think so. Not only I think so, I'm for sure. Because back in the 60s, when I was working, starting my work in India, there were very, very few people interested in herpetology. In fact, then, for example, a young lady named J. Vijaya was literally the first Indian lady herpetologist who joined us at the Madras Snake Park. And she went on to rediscover the forest cane turtle in Kerala. She went on very intrepid studies of turtles up in some pretty dangerous parts of Bihar and West Bengal. And so I realized that, wow, I'm promoting or at least encouraging people to get into this rather odd field. And very often to the despair of their parents.
Yes, exactly.
But in fact, I had to sort of intercede sometimes and say, look, this is a very legitimate, a very practical field to get into. Don't worry, your son or your daughter is going to shine. And sure enough, there have been a lot of herpetologists. In fact, this place, there are many, many graduates, dozens of graduates of the Croc Bank and of the Chennai Snake Park who went on to do, who are still doing fantastic work in herpetology. I'm proud of that.
That's fine. So do you feel crocs have the same chance at conservation when compared to tigers? Because there's just like a full-fledged government involvement with Project Tiger and things like that. But how much?
There was with crocodiles too. Actually, just around the same time that Project Crocodile started, Project Tiger started, Project Crocodile got going too. And it was really, that was the beginning of crocodile conservation. And I must say that I might be responsible for part of the interest in it, because I carried out some of the first surveys in the early 70s, around 73 and 74. I wandered all around the country looking at crocodile populations. And the gharial, of course, was critically endangered. The saltwater crocodile, very few survived in Bhitarkanika in Orissa, and in the Sundarbans, and in the Andaman Islands they were trashed. There was hardly anything left. Now I'm very happy to say that there has been a comeback in all three species, and a lot still has to be done. But interestingly, and sort of ironically, now our mission, our conservation mission, is teaching people how to live with crocodiles, because conflict can happen and it can be very dangerous.
And is there an area of research that you would expect, or kind of propel current people studying herpetology now? Do you think they need to research on something that you may have not had the opportunity to do?
We are still discovering new species of reptiles and amphibians almost on a weekly basis in India. When I first went to Agumbe way back years ago, there were only about 35 or 40 species of amphibians there, and now there are well over 150 different kinds of frogs and toads described from there. So we're learning about reptiles and amphibians by leaps and bounds, partly as a result of some of the early work I did, but much more is given the credit given to some of the large research and institutions are encouraging this kind of work in taxonomy and in the habits and ecology of animals.
Do you work with people who have been involved in wildlife crime networks? Do you rehabilitate them, or is that out of your purview totally?
Well, in a way, I'm the guy who helped get the Urlas turn over from catching snakes for their skins into a cooperative society to produce venom. It was a tough job because in the 1970s, when the Wildlife Act came out, the Forest Department came down very heavily on the Urlas, amongst other people, for catching and killing so many snakes. And I was definitely part of it. But at the same time, these Urlas were my friends, and I was watching them basically starting to starve to death, because this is what they knew best. They're the best snake hunters in the world. So that gave us the idea to start the Urla Cooperative, and this snake catchers cooperative now produces most of the venom used to make life-saving antivenom. So yeah, I can claim some responsibility for that, but it's really up to them to take this forward.
So as a country, do we have enough, considering that you said earlier in the day that there were about 50,000 deaths, snake-related deaths? Do we have enough stock of antivenom, or how many centers do we have antivenom collected at?
Well, the venoms, most of the venom is collected right here at the Urla Cooperative, and right now we've found that since there is so much variation in venoms, that we actually should be collecting venoms from the four corners of India and pooling it to make an antivenom which would be suitable to treat all snake bites around the country. So yes, much needs to be done. Venom production has to be improved. Antivenom itself has to be improved. It has to be made much stronger. And we have to look at other species of snakes which may be causing deaths which we are not sure of yet. For example, most of the snakes which are covered by the antivenom we have in India, the cobra, the crate, the Russell's viper, the saw-scale viper, these are the most common, deadliest snakes of India. But there are other very dangerous snakes. There's a black crate and a banded crate found in the northeast. There's an Andaman crate found over in the Andaman Islands. Is our antivenom okay for them? Will it protect them? So one of the projects we have here, which is actually supported by something called USV Pharmaceuticals in Bombay, they're helping us collect venom samples from throughout the country to test our antivenoms against this venom to see whether they're effective. We've got a long way to go. This is just the beginning. And we are just a part of quite a big network of people trying to do something about it. Probably the biggest part is educating people, because now we know that antivenom is the only cure for snake bite, but do people in the village know that? They still go to a local mantrawala, or they go for herbal medicines or Ayurvedic medicines and other things. And people have to understand this snake bite is a medical emergency. You've got to get treatment right away. I mean, Ayurvedic medicines and all these other medicines, traditional systems are great for treating certain ailments and illnesses over a period of time. Snake bite is a medical emergency. It has to be treated now. There's no argument.
Okay. And sorry there. I think I'm done with my questions. Is there anything that you would like to add? Anything in particular with with reference to your project here, or with the one that you're working on currently? Is there anything that you're working on, a new project? Or
the newer project, and I keep talking about it, is the snakebite project. And I think my appeal to everybody out there, most of us in India have roots in the villages in some way or the other. We have contacts with the villages. What we're trying to do is to get Village India conscious of exactly what we were just talking about. Your readers, mostly in English, are going to understand very easily and probably already know a lot of what we've talked about. But getting these same messages to Village India depends on the willingness and cooperation, collaboration that people, your readers, have and can help us get the messages out. In fact, what I'd like to do is give you the links to the 3 videos that we've produced. They're going to be made into all regional languages. And if I give you the YouTube video links, perhaps you can publish them. And
yes, and we could also maybe request perhaps into Tamil to carry the story, because they also have like a reach with the Tamil readership.
That would be fabulous.
So they sometimes
we've really got to reach the villages, and this is where 97% of snake bite deaths happen in villages. So although it's wonderful talking to you, I would really like to be talking to Village India.
What is the percentage of maiming that happens? Because people also kind of get damaged nerves.
Oh, absolutely. When we say there are 50,000 people killed by snake bite, we're not even touching the problem. There are hundreds of thousands of people who are permanently injured by snake bite. This is a very, very serious medical issue, and we are not paying enough attention to it. Both the government and we ourselves are not paying enough attention to it.